Congresswoman Hooley, and the next President of the United States, Senator Clinton.
Join me in welcoming the next President of the United States, Senator Hillary Clinton.
Wow, that was great. Hello, Eugene. I sure hope that sign is right. Is Oregon Clinton country? It is so great to be here. This is my second visit to this high school. And I was here 12 years ago. And I have wonderful memories of that trip. And I'm excited to be back as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States. I want to thank your governor, who has done such a great job actually producing results for working people right here in Oregon, fighting every single day. It's great to have him with me on the campaign trail and to have his support and leadership. Please sit down. I know. Thank you. I know some of you have been here for a while and might feel good to sit down, but I am grateful to your governor because his support for me really dovetails with what I believe we need to do in our country. You know, to have a president again who actually cares about the American middle class, gets up every single day and works to give working people a better shot at the American dream, ends the domination of our government by the wealthy and the well-connected, reverses what has become the philosophy of the Bush years, a government of the few and by the few and for the few, and gets back to making our country work for everyone again with shared prosperity and shared opportunities. And I am particularly pleased to be here with Congresswoman Hooley. Darlene is a friend of mine going back ever since she came to Congress. And I am so proud of the work that she has done for her constituents and for this state and this country. She was one of the leaders on issues ranging from making sure that our young men and women in uniform had body armor to making sure we took care of our veterans. And Darlene, you've done a wonderful job. I want to recognize Secretary of State Bill Bradbury, a longtime friend who's here. Bill always has a smile on his face. He just makes me feel good whenever I see him. I also want to thank Mayor Kitty Piercy. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. The mayor said that she was with me when I was here 12 years ago. It was a really hot day, but we had a great time, and I'm glad to see you again. I also want to thank a group of elected officials, representatives of law enforcement and health care, and so many important services in counties like this one and across Oregon and America, and particularly Doug Robertson, Douglas County Commissioner for many years, for meeting with me to talk about how we're going to work to restore county payments so that the federal government keeps faith with counties here and elsewhere. And I'm working with your wonderful Senator Ron Wyden to make sure we reinstate those payments so that Oregon has the money that it's entitled to. And I particularly want to thank the principal, the faculty, the staff, the students, and the orchestra from South Eugene High School. You know, running for president gives you such a wonderful look at the entire country. You know, 2 days ago, I was in Pittsburgh, and here I am in Eugene, and I get to travel across this extraordinary nation of ours, meeting people, listening to them, having conversations, and it just reinforces the depth of my commitment to making sure that we take our country back, that we once again begin acting like Americans. You know, George Bush and Dick Cheney have conducted a dangerous experiment in extremism. They have knocked America off course, and they have unfortunately injected fear and fatalism into our political system. They have tried to not only make us fearful and unsure that we can solve our problems, but they have played off of that in a way that has undermined the trust and confidence of the American people in our president and in our federal government. And at a time like this, when we have a lot of big challenges, we need a president who is going to summon us to greatness again, who will make it clear that there's not a problem we face or a challenge we have that we cannot meet and overcome, and that we also will once again seize the opportunities that are before us. You see, I am fundamentally very optimistic and confident. I believe the best days of America are still ahead of us. I know that this is not just about the next election. This is about the next generation. And I want to make a big bet on the young people of America, to give them the blessings, the tools and resources that they deserve to have, because I want no part of being among the first generation of Americans that would leave our country worse off than when we found it. That would be breaking faith with all that has come before, and there's no reason for that. There are 3 of us left vying for the presidency. Of course, on the Democratic side, Senator Obama and myself, and on the Republican side, Senator McCain. And there are certainly differences among and between us. And we need an election that is really focused on what each of us is proposing to do as president. Because when it's all said and done, when the speeches are over and the cameras are gone, what matters is what you do and what results you will produce for the American people. So you may have noticed that I'm running a campaign that is very specific, setting forth solutions for the American economy, solutions for universal health care, solutions to deal with energy and global warming and education and housing and all of the important issues that people talk to me about across our country. And I believe that it's important for you to know before you vote what the person running for president intends to do upon taking office. Because I want you to hold me accountable. Now, some of you may remember President Bush in 2000 campaigned on being a compassionate conservative. It sounded great. I mean, who could argue with that? I never knew what it meant. He sure didn't enlighten us about what it meant. But he gave a lot of speeches about how he was going to be a compassionate conservative. Well, because we didn't have the specifics to tie him down, because we didn't say, what exactly does that mean? It turns out he was neither compassionate nor conservative. He was uncompassionate and radical, and we've been paying a big price ever since. So I'm going to be talking with people across Oregon so that when those ballots start arriving in the mail, you'll be able to say, well, I heard her in Eugene, or I saw her on television in Portland or Medford or somewhere, and she said she was going to do this, and I'm going to hold her to it. And I want you to know what I mean about solutions. When I say solutions, I mean an economy that works for everybody again. I mean jobs with rising incomes that can support a middle-class standard of living. I mean solutions to change our tax code, to strip it of every single penny of tax benefits that goes to any business that exports a job out of Oregon to some foreign country. By solutions, I mean restoring fairness to the tax code. It is wrong that a Wall Street money manager making $50 million a year pays a lower percentage of his income to the federal government than a nurse, a teacher, or a truck driver right here in Eugene making $50,000 a year. When I say solutions, I mean we're going to have a new trade policy that will be smart trade, pro-American trade, pro-worker trade, because we can compete with anybody around the world, but we can't do it if we're not on a level playing field. And it's time to unleash the American workforce, to give them the competitive advantages they need, to make sure that others who trade with us are following the rules, not violating them, and then let us compete with anybody in the world and start exporting again. When I say solutions, I mean getting back to a balanced budget and a surplus. George Bush inherited that from my husband, and he has squandered it. If we had stayed on the path that we were on when Bill left office, we would have paid down our debt. We would have paid back the Social Security Trust Fund. We would be shoring up the Medicare Trust Fund and making smart investments that will make us richer and safer and stronger as a nation. Now, where are we? $9 trillion in debt, skyrocketing deficits. We borrow money from the Chinese to buy oil from the Saudis. That's George Bush's idea of smart economic policy. And that is not in America's interest, is it? So I want to get back to fiscal responsibility because I think that will strengthen us and better prepare us for the future. And we will once again see incomes rising. They went up $7,000 per typical family in the 1990s. We had more people lifted out of poverty than at any time in our recent history. And now look, here we are under President Bush. The typical American families lost $1,000 in income. And the price of everything is going up, from health care to gas to other energy costs to groceries. So let's get back to an economy that doesn't just work for the wealthy and the well-connected, but works for you and your neighbors and your friends. And I want to be very clear here. I have nothing at all against rich people. I mean, God bless them. And of course, you know, much to my amazement and Bill's, he actually made a lot of money when he got out of being president. That's great. But it's not rich people who built America. It is the hardworking, middle class, and working people that built America. And we need a president again who gets it, who isn't isolated in the White House, but knows what makes this country great and gets this economy going again. You know, during this election, occasionally I've heard people criticize the 1990s. Well, that's fair. But I'm never quite sure what they're criticizing it for? Are they upset about the peace or the prosperity? I never can figure that out. We're not going backwards, but let's at least learn from the past so we don't repeat the mistakes and build on the positive accomplishments so that we can go into the future with confidence and optimism, because we can create new good jobs again. Here are 3 ways we can do it. Number 1, we are going to have a declaration of energy independence in America. And I have this idea that we should write it out like a Declaration of Independence and have every American sign it, because there's something for all of us to do. Of course, our government has to lead the way, which it has not been doing. But if we don't get serious about clean, renewable energy, moving off of our carbon-based economy, becoming a leader in the world to take the kind of steps that are necessary to reverse global warming and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, then we will have failed. We will have failed as human beings and as Americans. And I'm not going to let that happen if I am the President of the United States. Here's what I would do. I mean, we're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and we're going to do it 80% below 1990 levels by what year? 2050. 2025? We're going to go as fast as we can, and Oregon is a good example. Oregon's already made progress. You know, when I travel around the country and I talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, you can see people are just so skeptical. So when I tell them that Oregon's a leader, that Portland has now reduced greenhouse gas emissions 1% below 1990 levels, it becomes more real and achievable. I want to provide incentives to our car companies and put them on a fast track to move toward higher gas mileage cars. We could get 100-mile-per-gallon engines if we invested in them. There are cars right now being test-driven on American roads that actually do that. They're kind of hyper hybrids, and they have the capacity to really maximize the use of the electricity and the gasoline. It's our job to make a viable market for that, and also to move toward 25% of our electricity from renewable sources by 2025. And when we do that, that will be very beneficial for Oregon, because with wind power and solar power, yes, even Oregon can do solar power, I am convinced of that, and geothermal and biofuels, we can begin to take back our energy destiny. I would do this through a strategic energy fund. How would I fund it? Take the subsidies away from the oil companies and put them to work on behalf of clean, renewable energy. And I would offer the oil companies a choice. They can be part of the solution and make their own investments in clean, renewable fuels and upgrading their equipment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Or we can impose a windfall profits tax, because remember, last year alone, ExxonMobil made $40 billion in profits. When George Bush became president, oil was $20 a barrel. It's now over 110. That is not the oil company's fault. It's not even the oil producing country's fault. It's our fault, because we have failed to organize ourselves and set this goal. This can be the equivalent for our generation, and especially these young people, that the space race was for a previous generation if we do it, and we do it with the same level of commitment. By solutions, I mean investing in new jobs, like at least 5 million from clean energy and at least 3 million from rebuilding America. The people who built America should be asked to rebuild America. Our bridges, our roads, our tunnels, our mass transit and water systems are woefully out of date, and they're literally collapsing. You know, the bridge in Minneapolis, the levees in New Orleans, that could happen in so many places, anywhere in America at any time. So let's put Americans to work doing what they need to do to help cities and counties and states rebuild our infrastructure. And we can create jobs by ending George Bush's war on science. He has been waging a war on government scientists. And you know some of the ways he's done it. I remember a few years ago, I joined with Senator Patty Murray from Washington because the FDA would not unleash government scientists to make their findings and a decision as to whether or not to put emergency contraception on sale in pharmacies. They wouldn't make the decision because the White House said, don't make the decision because you're going to make a decision based on science, which we don't agree with. And we pushed them and pushed them. We're finally able to get a decision. You know what they've done with global warming, where they have time and again told government scientists, don't do that research, don't publish that research, don't talk about it, why don't you retire early? Trying to deny what was apparent to anyone except the real troglodytes who refused to go along with the weight of evidence of the scientific community. And perhaps most egregiously, the roadblocks that have been put up to some life-saving research. I have said upon becoming president, I would ask the Congress to send me the bill that George Bush has vetoed twice. I will sign it, and we will start federally funding stem cell research in America. Every day I meet somebody who at least has reason to hope that there might be a cure or prevention for Alzheimer's, for juvenile diabetes, for a range of diseases of all kinds. And we're losing our advantage globally because other countries are moving full speed ahead. I believe that we can get this economy producing jobs again. And one of the ways we'll help it along is by, once and for all, achieving quality, affordable health care for every single American. Because this is not only a moral issue, this is an economic issue. We spend more money than any other country by a long shot. But we don't cover everybody. We don't give people the full benefit of even having an insurance policy. I want to ask you, how many of you know somebody who is uninsured? And how many of you, maybe you yourself, have had to argue with an insurance company because they won't pay your doctor or your hospital? See, we have these two big problems. People talk about the uninsured, but we have just as many people who are underinsured. They can't afford policies that cover what they need, like if they have a pre-existing condition. And then they have to fight with the insurance companies. So here's what I want to do. If you have health insurance and you're happy with it, nothing changes. But if you're uninsured or underinsured, I want to open up the Congressional Health Plan to every American, so you have the same choices as federal employees. There are over 250 options, and they're good. They cover preventive care, mental health, which we must cover and end the stigma for mental health care. And we'll make it affordable by giving people health care tax credits, by limiting the amount of money they ever have to pay in a premium to a low percentage of their income. So on a sliding scale, you'll be able to get the health care that is right for you and for your family. And we're also going to tell the insurance companies they can't keep doing business the way they've been doing business. It's not good for America, and it's not good for our health care system. It's shocking that last year the health insurance industry spent $50 billion, $50 billion, avoiding covering people. Now you have to ask yourself, how can that be? Well, they try to get you in as small a group as possible. If you're a small business, they say, well, here's your group. And you say, we only have 10 people. What if somebody has a heart attack next year? Well, that's too bad. They tell you that you can't really get insured for that heart condition you had unless you pay a whole lot more. And they try to limit who they actually insure to begin with. And they spend $50 billion trying to make that happen. So I've got a new business model for them. They're going to insure everybody. They're going to cover every pre-existing condition, and they can use that $50 billion to get the job done. Now, I am the only candidate left in this race who has a universal health care system. And the reason is because this is not an issue for me. This is a passion of mine. I do not want to go any longer in the richest country in the world and see people who literally die because they didn't have access to health insurance and they didn't get health care in time. And there isn't any way to have a universal system if you don't require everybody to be in it. That's like having a voluntary Social Security system or a voluntary Medicare system. If people aren't in it, either they pay for it themselves or their employer pays for it themselves or the government helps them pay for it, then you'll leave people out and you'll still have people showing up at the emergency room sick, and you'll still have insurance companies cherry picking and gaming the system. And you'll still have people with insurance, like many of us, paying a hidden tax of about $900 a year because when people do finally show up at the emergency room, they get taken care of and the rest of us pay for it. So everybody's got to pay something. It doesn't have to be much if you don't have much. But if you are able to pay, we want you to pay because we want a system of shared responsibility. Because we will never become healthier unless people take better care of themselves. That has to be part of health care reform in America. And I'm asked all the time, well, do you think we could get it done now? And I honestly believe we can, because I think doctors are fed up. I know nurses are, and I'm so proud that the Oregon Nurses Association has endorsed me because they're on the front lines of what goes on in health care every day. And so just think of it. If we have doctors and nurses and other healthcare workers, and we have businesses and labor unions who are tired of paying the bills, and we have families, and on the other side we have insurance companies, don't you think a president committed to doing it could finally make it happen? And that's what I will do. And we're also going to make sure education remains a passport to opportunity. That means starting with pre-kindergarten, with preschool education, working with families so they're better able to prepare and teach their own children. And I will end the unfunded mandate known as No Child Left Behind. Look, I believe in high standards. I've been working on education reform for 25 years. And I know that we have to have an accountable system. I just don't think the way to do it is to turn all of our young people into test takers and our teachers into test givers. I don't think that adds up to a great education system. I don't think every child learns the same. And I think it's a shame to cut off certain programs and parts of the curriculum because we have to keep drilling people to take these tests over and over again. I want each individual student to be exposed to a broad and comprehensive curriculum to enable that young person to live up to his or her God-given potential. That's what we should be aiming for. And then let's make college affordable again for hardworking, middle-class families. It is clear that everywhere in our country, the doors of higher education are shutting on young people who deserve the chance to go. It didn't used to be like that. You know, it used to be that the cost of higher education was high, but incomes were also comparative. Now it's the fact that we've had stagnant incomes and the cost keeps going up. And we haven't changed the system in order to be able to make it affordable. So here's what I would do. I would double the Hope tax credit to $3,500 a year so that more families could take advantage of it. Make sure we had more need-based aid like Pell Grants because we've moved too much in the direction of merit-based aid, leaving more families out. I would get rid of that FAFSA form, you know, the financial aid form that you have to fill out. I mean, that is the cruelest joke in the world. You spend hours filling it out, you get to the end of it and they say, just kidding, we're not giving you any money. You make 1 penny too much. Get rid of it. Get a checkbox on the tax form. Give people aid on a sliding scale based on their taxable income. We don't need all of that information. I also will crack down on predatory student lending companies that have been ripping off families. I got to ask, how many people have college debt in this gymnasium? And I'm always curious, does anybody pay more than 20% interest? What do you pay? A lot of money. You know, I was just in Portland and somebody yelled out 25%. And there was just this gasp from the audience. I have been on college campuses where it goes up to 27%, 29%. This is unbelievable. Think about it, it is immoral. We've had low interest rates, and here are these student loan companies, along with the credit card companies and every other kind of company, charging these outrageous rates of interest. Well, I want to get back to doing what I had an opportunity to take advantage of. You know, when I went to college, my dad saved enough money for room, board, and tuition, but that was it. I had to work to buy a cup of coffee or buy a book, and that was our deal. And it worked out fine. I've worked, you know, ever since I was 13 in one way or another. So we got through it, and then I decided out of the blue I wanted to go to law school, and I told my father. He said, that's not part of the deal. So I kept working, and I got a little scholarship. But in those days, you could borrow money directly from the federal government. I did at about 2% interest. Remember that? I see all these heads nodding. That meant when I graduated from law school, I could go do the work I wanted to do. I went to work for the Children's Defense Fund. It didn't pay a lot of money, but I could work on behalf of abused kids and neglected kids and kids in trouble. And then over time, I paid it off. So I want to move back toward those low interest rates and that direct lending. And I want to provide 2 years of national service where you can make up to $10,000 a year that would go directly into your college costs. And finally, if you're willing to do public service when you graduate, like nursing or teaching or law enforcement, we will forgive your debt over time so that you have a better chance at a future. And I will also restore America's leadership and our moral authority in the world. And that begins with ending the war in Iraq and bringing our troops home as quickly and responsibly as possible. I think with the proper planning, we can begin to bring troops home within 60 days. We can bring 1 to 2 brigades home a month. It's not going to be easy. And anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen, I don't know what kind of crystal ball they're looking in, because we don't know. But one thing I do know is that there is no military solution, and it is time for the Iraqis to take responsibility for their own future. And as we bring our troops home, we're going to take care of our veterans. We're going to give them the health care and the compensation and the services that they have richly earned. And I will reach out to the rest of the world to find common ground. I've been to more than 80 countries. I believe that we can rebuild our relationships and once again find that opportunity to work to deal with the threats and the dangers we face. Because no matter what you're concerned about, if it's global terrorism or global warming or global epidemics, the United States cannot overcome these challenges alone. We need friends and allies, and we need people who understand it is a complicated world, but we can, working together, find that common ground and rebuild America's leadership for a safe and prosperous future for us all. So there's a lot of work to be done, and what I want to do is to have a conversation with all of you. You'll have a chance to ask questions, and I will look forward to answering as many as I possibly can. Because for me, that's what this election should be about. It should be about us mutually deciding what direction we want our country to head. It should be about us determining what any of us can do to make a contribution. Because electing a president is not the end of anything. It's the beginning. It's the beginning of the work we have to undertake together, because there will be so much to be done. I'm not sure that we even know all the damage we'll have to repair when we finally get back into the White House. You've heard me say it before, I'll say it again. It took a Clinton to clean up after the first Bush. It's going to take a Clinton to clean up after the second Bush. Thank you all very, very much. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And you know, your question is really important, because so much of what we're doing about helping people go to college is skewing college enrollment to the wealthiest of families. You can go from campus to campus in a lot of places in our country, and the majority of students now are from families making more than $100,000 a year. That is not the way it used to be. And when I am president, we're going to reverse that. We're going to get back to letting young people who are on their own, who are doing the best they can, who are trying hard to get an education, to be able to do so. Because after all, that's what we should be focused on, how we provide more and more opportunities for each and every one of you. Now, I'm going to end here by just asking you to think about something. In this election, there are so many reasons for you to vote for or against somebody. You can vote for somebody because you like the way he or she makes you feel. You can vote for somebody because you like his or her position on an issue. You can vote for somebody because you like his or her clothes or hair. I mean, you can vote for them on any reason you possibly can imagine. But why don't we start thinking about it as it truly is? This is an extended job interview. We are asking the people of America to determine who they would hire for the toughest job in the world. And what we have to decide as a country, is what it's going to take to go into that White House on January 20th, 2009, and to deal with everything we inherit, but also to summon our country back to all that it can be again. I believe my lifetime of experience, my understanding of the way to get things done, my record of accomplishment, helping to create programs that are already helping people in Oregon, like the Children's Health Insurance Program, which insures thousands of kids every month, or getting health care for National Guard and Reserve members, and so much more, will enable me to hit the ground running and to begin to restore the confidence and competence of the American people's government. That is what is at stake, and I hope that you will support me in the Oregon primary. Thank you all very, very much.